Thank you all for coming. Like I said, my name is Monte. I work over here at Mount Vernon Memorial Park. We are part of a larger network of death care providers in the country. We are the largest network, over 2,000 locations. So one of the things that does for people, if they happen to get a plan with us, is that they can transfer it to the new place. So I tell people, whoever said they can't take it with you, didn't know about us. But I've been working over here for several years. I've actually got a background in pastoral ministries as well, so I've probably officiated close to 400 or 500 services. I've been with people, I've told their story, I've held people's hands as they've passed, and I approach this very much as a care of taking care of people. So even though I'm going to mention my company today that I work for, it can apply to anyone. There's a lot of different providers out there, so I'm not here necessarily to push. This is what I offer, this is what I do, so I want you to hear that loud and clear today from me. So we're going to see if we can make all this work here. Not working. There we go. We'll have time for questions at the end, and I want you to relax. This is just information only. And our process, my goal today is to simplify the process for you all. And by the way, I may crack a few jokes, and I don't do this to be irreverent, okay? I know going through this myself that sometimes the line between laughter and tears is about a razor's edge. And sometimes we laugh to release tension, and as we talk about this whole thing, but at the same time, I do like to put a little fun back in fun roll. Like I said, I've been through this, and I want just to tell you a little bit of my story. There we go. But our agenda today, I want to talk about the benefits of prearranging, the options for personalizations, and the value of leaving a legacy. And here's the fun part about this, and talking about death, which a lot of us don't want to talk about. But let me ask you this question. If a runner talks about the finish line, does that diminish his race? Not a bit. We're all in this race called life, or we are all in this journey. And if you take April 15th off the calendar, does that make income taxes go away? Oh my Lord, I wish that were the case, but not. And so by not talking about it, it doesn't make it go away, does it? We're going to have to deal with this one way or another. But I want to talk today about the value of also leaving a legacy, because that is so, so important. And the thing, I've got to meet some phenomenal people over the years in what I do. And here's the beautiful thing. In talking about death, it actually becomes a conversation about life. How am I going to live this? What am I leaving behind? What is this all about? And so that's the fun part about all this. So a little bit of my story. That's the gravestone of my mom and dad. I lost my parents when I was 17. We had a neighbor that was paranoid schizophrenic and showed up at our house and took them out, as well as some other neighbors down the street. So as we talk about this is stuff coming out of my own experience and my own heart, okay? I'm not here as some salesman to try to schlep anything. I am a fellow traveler on the road of life with you. So I've been through this. I lost my best friend 2.5 years ago to COVID, different people, as I've mentioned. And so my heart is with you if you have lost someone here today, if you're thinking about that. And I want to just share with you from personal experience that closure is overrated. You never quit grieving. You will always, I know some Christmases or holidays or birthdays, I get clobbered. And that's okay, I'm a human being. The shortest verse of the Bible says Jesus wept, right? And if he can weep, so can I, because he was a man of sorrows and he was acquainted with grief. Very much so. So I am part of the human condition with you, and I share this stuff today as part of that. So, but I do have a few funny headstones. There's Fred Flitz stone. Here lies Lester Moore, 4 slugs for 44. No less, no more, okay? Actual headstone. Here lies Brian Vickers, second fastest draw. I told you I was sick. I actually saw that on the headstone when I worked in Bakersfield for the same company. I did another headstone for a gentleman over here, and it's so funny. He says, "Here lies the shell, the nut is gone." Okay? But one of my favorite headstones is just 2 words, and it says, "Safely home." I love that. I love the peace behind all that. Here lies my husband, Tom. Now I know where he is at night. From Mel Blanc, that's all, folks. Remember him, Porky Pig, and a few other voices. Old people at weddings used to poke me and say, "You're next," so I started going to the funerals and saying the same thing. But I would encourage you that funerals are the weddings that nobody plans for. People are getting together. They're remembering. They're connecting. They're renewing connections. And I love this one from Ruth Bilgram. It says, "End of construction. Thank you for your patience." Love that. And some of you know her. That's the wife of Billy Graham. But in dealing with all this stuff, we want to simplify the process, and some of this may have been your experience. In order to make an appointment, he first had to update his operating system, download an app to get a username, choose a password, log into his health portal, navigate the message, and write his doctor. By that time, it was too late. Can some of you relate to that? Yeah, we've been there. Yeah. So let me ask you a crazy question. Would you take a trip to New York City by just showing up and expecting everything to fall in place by itself? 2 weeks ago, actually last week, just got back from a trip. We went back to there, and we have our special needs son, who I love dearly with all my heart, and my wife, but we had to have things planned out. We had to have tickets, we had all the rest of it, because if you're going to take a trip, you would prepare. And by the way, this is a trip we're all going to take, whether we want to talk about it or not. We would book the flight, we'd arrange transportation to the airport, we'd show up on time, have your ticket, your ID ready, confirm your seat assignment, check your bags, arrange transportation after you get there, make sure you had a place to stay, etc., etc., etc. And how many times we've seen people just show up at our place after they've had a loss and just expect everything to fall in place. I wish it were that easy. But there's a lot to the whole process. So life happens, doesn't it? And we can ask ourselves, are you prepared for the journey that awaits? We have to think about it, folks, because this is a journey we will all take. And I do have a newsflash for you. It's not a matter of if, then when. Benjamin Franklin was the guy that said there's two inevitable things in life, right? Taxes and death. In Psalms chapter 90, verse 12, we can read these words: "Teach us to number our days, that we would present a heart of wisdom." And so what I want to share with you today is just a matter of wisdom about preparing. Even in biblical times, you saw. Remember, Abraham bought a cave at this place called Machpelah, and the different folks of the family got buried there. Remember when they left Egypt, and Joseph said, "Take my bones back there." When Jacob passed away, they took him back to the family plot. And so there was this sense of heritage and this sense of connectedness that will happen. But here's the good news. We don't have to take this journey unprepared. And I want to encourage you to dare and see the bigger picture that's involved. Because this is something we all will need to face, whether we want to or not. So I do have a little video I want to share with you here. Let's see if I can make this work. About the value of prearranging.
If I could give you one piece of advice, pre-plan. It is definitely the way to go.
Pre-planning brings the peace of mind to the family at the time of need.
It's like when you pre-plan for your retirement.
Because of the pre-planning, we were able to go through and do the little things that were important to the family and not have to worry about the planning process.
The only thing that I want my family to worry about is be on time.
With pre-planning, you get to bring every detail into it that you want.
It gives you the opportunity to shine the way you want to shine.
We could really concentrate on our mother's wishes, her memory that we wanted to let everybody see.
This way it's not a sad time, it's a happy time.
The casket background was a royal flush. She had a golf club in there, anything that she enjoyed.
They won't have to worry about anything. It might even make them mad. They have no reason to argue, bicker, or anything.
With my father's funeral, we didn't have a pre-planned arrangement in place. And with my mother's, we did, and it made things a lot easier for the family to go through the process. You can just have the peace of mind that everything's taken care of.
I left feeling happy, and that's exactly how she wanted it.
I think that pre-planning just takes all the guesswork out of the process, that you know you've planned the funeral exactly the way your loved one would want.
So I'd like to share a few stats with you, and I call this one conversation makes all the difference. 95% of people say they really don't want to talk about the end-of-life wishes, and this came from a thing called the Conversation Project. But how many have actually done it? 21% of people said they haven't had the conversation because they don't want to upset their loved ones. It becomes taboo. We don't want to talk about it. And 53% said they'd be relieved if someone else would start the conversation. So everyone wants to talk about it, but can you start the conversation for me? And that's what we often do, is help people, again, embrace what is going to happen. 97% of people say it's important to put their wishes in writing. Record it, put it down. You know how many have actually done it? About a third. So in other words, talk is cheap, and what we want to do is help people put a plan together so when that time comes, people have a plan and they're ready to follow it. And in all the years of doing this, by the way, I've never had anyone, not once, come in and say, "Doggone it, I wish Mom and Dad hadn't have done this." It's always, "Man, I'm relieved." Yes, it was simple, or it was elaborate, or "I can't believe she chose that ugly pink casket." But that's Mom, she liked pink, I literally saw that once. But it's always a relief, and it is a gift to the loved ones. Because one of these days, someone's going to get the phone call, and it could be one of life's most difficult events. And I want you to think about for a minute, who would get the phone call? Now, she talked about earlier, our attorney here, about, maybe a spouse, but in my case, both of my folks were gone at the same time. And so I'm sure there's even provisions to set things up that way. But who would get the phone call? Would they know what to do? Would they know where to start? And it is one of life's most stressful events. And let me ask you a simple question. If you could ease some of that stress for your loved ones, would you do it? Whether it be what I'm talking about here today, or what the attorney talked about, it is a way for us to relieve the stress. And we're in the process right now of putting it together. As I mentioned, I got a special needs son. And so we wouldn't want anything to, hinder his benefits and the things that he receives of, for instance, life insurance cashes in, boom, everything changes. So would they know who to call? Would they know where to start? And would they know how you want to be remembered? This is a chance for you to plan your own graduation service. Because one of these days you will all cross the finish line of life. You will have run the race. You will have finished the course, and we get to graduate. And that's why I like to think about this as our graduation. There's a verse in the Bible I used to not like, and it comes out of Psalms. It says, "Blessed in the sight of the Lord is the death of his loved ones," or his holy ones. And I used to hate that. Beautiful, blessed. I'm hurting. Until I saw one of my kids graduate. They walked across the stage. And I thought, this is graduation. It puts a whole different perspective on this. But if we can help people understand and help them prepare, not just by the financial, not just by the logistical, but I know from experience, from the faith perspective as well, everything changes. So, it's about protecting your family, because we plan for important things like weddings and funerals, and we plan for vacations, and we plan for retirement and education and all this stuff. So, and you buy insurance, right? You got health insurance in case you get the crud or fall and break a hip. You got car insurance in case you get in a wreck. You got house insurance in case that thing burns on fire, catches on fire, you get a flood. So if you buy insurance for what might happen, does it make sense to plan for what will happen? So that's kind of where we're going. So planning can help protect your loved ones from having to make important decisions in a stressful time and second guessing what you wanted, and the rising costs of funeral arrangements. Some people don't know this, at least a lot of companies, at least mine for sure. If you buy a plan, it locks it in. So 80 years from now when your time comes, it's the same price. And you're all good for that. In your in your packet today, there is this page here, and I call it Pre-Planning Made Simple. And there's two ways you can make plans. You can wait till someone passes, or you can do it all ahead of time and everybody's got a clear mind. And so let me just kind of walk you through some of the differences there, and this T-chart's in there. If you do it ahead of time, you can do it together in a moment of clarity. And I can even crack a few more corny jokes. Like, what do you call a funeral arranger who steals boxer shorts and T-shirts? He's an undertaker. I could go on, but I'll save you. But you can do this in a moment of clarity, or you can wait till someone's in a moment of stress and grief and loss. And I often talk with couples and I say, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I'm talking to both of you today. Would you rather have this conversation with both of you or with one of you? We're going to have the conversation. I would much rather have it in an easier time. And what I often tell people is take care of it, file it, and forget about it. You know, you've got the plan in place, move on, and then get back to playing with the grandkids or fishing or taking a trip in your RV or golfing or whatever you do. If you take care of it ahead of time, it freezes your current costs. Otherwise, you got this thing called inflation. You've got payment options, even we can set you up on, or you got full payment. In our particular case, we have pre-planning discounts that help incentivize people to take care of this ahead of time. And we've answered the questions. What did mom and dad want? Did we do the right thing? Did they want burial, cremation? And I've even seen families get into conflict, and I've had to leave the room and say, you guys got to work this one out here by yourself. I'll be back to check on you in a few minutes. But it ensures people that your plan will be done the way you want it done. You reduce the financial burden from family, in other words, and otherwise they've got the full financial burden. And when that time comes, you can be in family mode, not business and logistics mode. I saw this with my uncle. My cousin passed away, and she was cremated, and it was 6 months before we finally had the burial in her service. All that time, though, he was in business mode, taking care of all of his stuff. Finally, 6 months later, he was finally able to break down and get out of logistics mode. We want people to be in the moment, not look back and say, man, my head was another place. I really didn't process. And also, too, if you take care ahead of time, it funds immediately. And I actually sat in the office of another estate attorney, and God bless you, estate attorneys. But this particular gentleman said, this is the way to go, because he's seen estates get hiccups in them, things get contested. Life insurance, they say, well, I got life insurance to take care of that. And sometimes it takes days, weeks, months. I met with a family a while back. It took her over a year to finally get reimbursed from life insurance because there was some hiccups in the process. So if you take care of this, it kind of is a standalone. And I've heard people say time and time again, well, I got a trust, I got a will, I got life insurance. And I've tried to tell them, and some people you are open to having that discussion, some are not. But I would say take this as a standalone, and that way it gives you breathing room to take care of all the rest of the affairs. You can have your funeral, you can take care of the immediate need, and then you've got days, weeks, months to work out the rest of the stuff that can be done, needs to be done. And I saw this on a planning calendar years ago. It says, do something today that your future self will thank you for. And by the way, I've had, again, kids, family members come in and say, I'm so glad mom and dad did this years ago. I didn't have to worry about it. And so we get to choose which side our family gets to be on. So we want to plan to make it right. And if we're taking a trip, it takes a plan. Now, we took our special needs son. He wanted to go to Washington, D.C., so of course we got tickets to go to the Smithsonian, and we got tickets to do the White House tour, and we got tickets to go on the Capitol tour. But that all took planning. Had we just showed up there, there is no way in heck we would have been able to get into those places. But since we did planning, it all worked the way it was supposed to go. So we want people to reflect. So how do you want to be remembered? Do you want burial? Do you want cremation? What do you want your service to say about your life? This gives a chance for you to make a statement and to speak into people's life. I still remember my folks' funeral, even though it was 44 years ago. I still remember one of the songs, and maybe some of you old folks like me will remember. It was B.J. Thomas's "Home Where I Belong." Some of you know the song. Dallas home, I'm going to rise again. Ain't no power on earth can keep me down. I remember that. But it's a chance for you to think about that and to really make a statement. And what do you want to leave behind to those that you love? In officiating services, I often use a quote. It's a paraphrase of Helen Keller. And she said this, that with the death of every friend I love, there remains a part of them to sustain me in a world without them. What is that we are leaving behind? So what would you want it to say? Do you want it to be in a chapel? Do you want it to be a church? Or a graveside? You know, what do you want that to be? Because this service will impact other people. And as I mentioned earlier, funerals are the weddings that nobody plans for. I still remember this gentleman, he came into Mount Vernon over there and he said, well, when I go, just burn me up and flush me down the toilet. I'm not going to give him leave. And I said, with all due respect, sir, do you have kids and grandkids? Yeah. Are they going to want to tell stories about Gramps? And I wasn't trying to push at him, preach at him, or push him back, but I wanted him to think, this is not just about you, buddy. It's about your family. It's about everybody we impact, because all of us are like boats going through the water. We leave a wake, don't we? We have influence in people's lives. And I wanted him to think about someone just inside himself. I even had a family come in later on. That's their original plan. They were going to do absolutely nothing. Then they became soccer grandparents. So they were taking those granddaughters, all these different soccer games. And then they watched how these girls processed the death of their other grandparents. They actually came in and rewrote their plan to include a service because they realized we don't live in a vacuum, do we? Our lives impact each other. And so we want people to reflect upon that. And what they would want that service to say. And do you want to commemorate life with a permanent memorial, prominent memorial? I tell people I really don't care if you get a cardboard box or you get a granite palace. Just get something, okay? Get what works for you. So I just want people to know you've got all kinds of options. If you want to get a private mausoleum, we can hook you up. If you want a regular burial spot, we can hook you up. If you want a beautiful spot in our cremation garden, we can hook you up. If you want something else, we've got all kinds of plans and options. We've even got a brand new mausoleum. And if you're above ground, you're a little closer to heaven, right? And by the way, that means mausoleum is called Ascension. And I asked people, do you know where Mickey Mouse is laid to rest? He's in a mausoleum, but that's a whole other story. At Mount Vernon, we've even got a free option for everybody. We got this thing called an ossuary where your cremated remains can be placed, and we give it to people for free. So we meet any budget. Okay. We even have, you can shoot part of your cremated remains into space. And I just want you to know right now, the sky is not the limit, okay? We can take you to the moon and beyond, which reminds me of the honeymooners. To the moon, Alice, to the moon. So, we want people to record their wishes. And by the way, we put in your hands today this thing called the personal planning guide. And what this does is helps you to put in writing, have a game plan. So you're not going to be one of those 90-some-odd% of people that say we ought to put it in writing and only 30% did anything about it. You've got a tool now, okay? And one of the pages here that's really important is page number 4, all the vital information. Things like where your mother's maiden name was and where was she born, okay? A lot of times people in a moment get grief brain. When my brother fell off a ladder and passed away, my sister-in-law, she says, that's what I had. She couldn't remember squat that day. We'd spent all night at the hospital. We were part of an honor walk, which is a whole other part of my story, which I might tell. But it eliminates the guesswork. And then over here, your legacy. What made you proud? What made you happy? What brought you the most joy? What were you passionate about? What put a smile on your face? Because that's the stuff we want to remember, don't we? Dr. Seuss puts it this way. He says, you'll never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. And so I encourage people, live every day to the fullest. Make those memories because we never know when life is going to change. I've experienced it myself. Some of you have been there yourself as well. Make the most of every day you've got. Don't look back with any regrets. And that's where this thinking about Stephen Covey, some of you have read the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? One of the chapters in the book is begin with the end in mind. Where do I want to end up? What do I want to leave behind? And how can I get there? And so that's what we do. We want you to record this so people know, what were these things that were so important to me? What was it all about anyway? And then your service preferences there. Do I want to have it here at Foundation Church? Do I want to have a graveside? Do I want to have... I've even done services in backyards and parks, okay? There's all kinds of options. And our goal is to make it personal so you're not going to the same service you went to last week with the names changed. We want it to reflect you. Because you are a unique individual. And I say people are like snowflakes, right? Some of us are flakier than others, but that's a whole other discussion. But to write it down. Put it in writing. And in your service preferences, yes, I want cremation, I want burial, I want a wood casket, I want to be out of Dixon, I want to go out there, I'm a veteran, and I want my military service, and we're going to set up the military honors for you. Whatever it is, we can make it happen. And are there any veterans in the room today? Thank you for your service, sir. Bless you. I was back east here and in Washington, and I looked at Arlington, and all these people that have laid down their lives, and these patriots, and I thought, are they getting their money's worth? And it made me think about us and our life. They laid down their life for our freedom and liberty. Are we honoring that sacrifice? But if you want to go out to Sacramento Valley National Cemetery, we can take you out there. In fact, I'm in a meeting with a family later on today. He wants to be sent to Texas and the military cemetery down there near his kids. And so, but this man was over 20 years in the Air Force, and God bless him for his service to our country. And then to schedule a funding option. If you want to lock in today's price and ease that financial burden, we can help you out because this thing, inflation, will hit. Now, this chart up here is a bit outdated already, but remember when the price of gas, I remember when I was a kid during the gas wars, I still saw it for 25 cents. Anyone remember those days? Yeah. But I remember a few years ago, I still remember getting it for 99 cents a gallon. We wouldn't even touch it now.
A lot more than a few years.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm dating myself here. But houses have gone up. Everything has gone up. Did you know that even the price of goose feathers has gone up? That means down is now up, but that's a whole other story on the But, inflation will hit, and if we take care of it now, it locks in the price. But we want you to inform your loved ones of your wishes, keep a file of all this stuff. And by the way, and I think you would also concur, make sure you're keeping this stuff not just in a safety deposit box. Because when you die, that puppy gets locked up, and we can't get access to that stuff. Good place to keep stuff, but also keep files in other places as well, so people know about that. Let your pastor know about it. Let your attorney know about all this stuff. Put it all together. Make sure people are in the loop, and include everybody in the loop. And one of the things I'd like you to consider too, and there's a pamphlet in here, is to consider the option of organ donation and tissue transplant. Some of you know this, but up to 8 people can be saved by organ donation. And by the way, they've had taken organ tissue donors even up to 100 years old. So I don't think any of you have hit that mark here yet, but you're all in good shape to do that. I became very familiar with this when my brother fell off a ladder. He was picking apples. He was only up about 8 feet. His feet got hung up in the rungs and he fell back and his head hit concrete and he never woke up. Brain injury that could not be recovered from. And so my sister-in-law, and I was there with him in the hospital. I got the news here and I jumped on a train and took off for Oregon. Got there went and rode all night. Got there the next day and we were at the hospital. But he became an organ donor because his daughter's best friend died waiting for a transplant. And there are people that die every day waiting for transplants. And there's an opportunity for you to leave a part of yourself behind. I mean, and his comment was, well, if I'm done with these parts, someone else might can get some use out of them. Sure enough, his kidneys are living inside of some other people right now. We got a letter back from one of the recipients who used to go 2 hours each way 3 times a week on their ranch up in Oregon, and now is back on their horse every day taking care of the ranch. And it's just neat to see how, and over 75 people can be impacted from bone and tissue donations as well. So I would, make that part of your legacy. And there's a pamphlet in your folder about that. That was my brother right there. He was a marathon runner. And by the way, his bucket list was to run the Boston Marathon and cross it with his daughter, who had run it previously. Backstory. He had qualified that year up in Newport, Oregon. If you take Newport, Oregon, Highway 20, clear across the country, you're going to end up in Boston. So he qualified on the other end of the country. My niece, who is in the picture there, missed the cut that year by 6 seconds. So she petitioned the Boston Athletic Association if she could run in his place, and they let her. So while she's running the race, she sees this gentleman here. His name is Kevin Schroyer. He is actually, and there was a picture of a girl on his back, young woman. That was his daughter, who was an organ donor. He was running in honor of his daughter. She was running in honor of her dad. That's them crossing the finish line together. You can't make this stuff up. But he left behind a legacy that was bigger than himself. And that's really what all this is about. There, my sister-in-law, she's working on the fluorograph, and their next picture there is the Donate Life float in the Rose Parade in Pasadena on New Year's Day. And so it's a way for his life to live on in other people. But it's a wonderful, wonderful tribute. The pre-planning is a decision that shows you care about those who come behind. You're not going to be like the guy that says, well, I'm not going to care. I don't know, that's someone else's problem. And we have to ask ourselves, do I want to leave a mess for someone else to clean up, or do I want to leave things in order? And here's an opportunity for you to leave some things in order. Where I work over here, we've got 10 locations locally. Here in the greater Sacramento area, there's a flyer in your pamphlet about that. Like I said, I work over here at Mount Vernon, and I consider it not just a job for me, but a calling and a ministry. I get a chance to serve a lot of people. And we've got 2,000 locations nationally, in which gives us this thing called national transferability. You buy something here, you move, you end up in Texas or Florida or some other place, take it with you. Everything transfers like for like, same price. So there's that pamphlet is in your folder there. But I ran across this quote years ago, and it makes a lot of sense. It says, "Show me the manner in which a nation or community cares for its dead, and I will measure with mathematical exactness the tender sympathies of its people in their respect for the law and the land and their loyalty to high ideals." In other words, how we deal with death says a lot about how we deal with life. Are we just disposable? Are we just throwaway? Do we treat this shell that was used by God in this life as a temple, do we treat it with honor and with dignity? This one conversation can make all the difference. It'll make the difference in your spouse because they'll know what to do. My brother and sister-in-law had that conversation, and so she knew what my brother wanted. Will it make a difference in your children and grandchildren? It sure will, and how things are remembered. And will you leave them a roadmap for the journey ahead? You have the opportunity to do that if you so choose. But let me give you one final fun fact. Your legacy matters. It really does. And the legacy is not just in a will or a trust and finances. It's not just in a funeral plan, but it's in your faith. And can that be followed? And will the people hang on to that? My mom and dad are gone, but the faith that they left me is even greater than them. And as much as I would love to have them here, I'm so glad that what they left me sustains them in a world without them. That's that same quote I mentioned. I want to tell one quick story here. Karen Marie Smith was 15 years old when she contracted cancer and passed away. Some of you may know Matt and Jenny. If you do, that's her parents. But her headstone says it all. And that words from Romans 8:18 there, it says, "The pain that you have been feeling cannot compare with the joy that is coming." We found those words in her journal. They were the screensaver on her computer. And that 15-year-old in facing death showed us all how to live. I go out to where her spot is. I never met Cammie. I met her folks. When we were doing her service, she was a big fan of Carrie Underwood. And so I downloaded Carrie Underwood's greatest hits, and I had that on the iPad to play her music out there at the service. And while they're bringing her casket up, it's like God reached down and hit the play button, and there's a song that says, "This is not my final home." Wow. We know the best is yet to come. And I read across this years ago, it says, "He who does not look at life with eternity in mind is blind when he considers this present world." You know, we know the best is yet to come. But in the meantime, we still need to prepare, don't we? We prepare for our loved ones, and out of love, we do this. And out of, it's a way we show we care. Now, in your pamphlet, there is also a page here. It says pre-planning, advanced planning worksheet. If you would like to talk with me, I'm not here to sell, but I would love to help you if you want to be helped. Fill that out, give it to me. Just give me your name if you want to say, I'd like to find out about it. Great, we'll talk about it. Also in your pamphlet, you talked about scams earlier. There's a page here that you need to be aware of what happens with all that. But a good trip starts with good planning. We found that out a couple of weeks ago. But we want you to make a plan, whatever it is. It could be the most basic thing that we absolutely offer. It could be elaborate. I really don't care. Just get what works for you, because we're all going to need to face all this. And I just want to thank you for being here and allow me to share a little bit of my story with you. Sometimes I wish I didn't have this story to tell, but at the same time, I'm glad I've got my story to tell, because I meet people all the time who face these situations and they have got no hope whatsoever. And I would rather face a tough situation with hope than a great situation and be hopeless. Amen?